Early morning, Northern Arabian Sea. The first flash appears on the screen so briefly it could pass for a radar artifact. Inside the combat information center of an outer screen destroyer, for half a heartbeat, not a single person utters a word. The tactical action officer leans toward the display, eyes unblinking, and the entire room's energy pivots in an instant. Surface-to-air track, bearing 038, fast mover, low altitude. A second contact blooms on the screen, then a third. The silence dissolves. The room fills with crisp voices, rapid keystrokes, and headset transmissions bleeding through one another. That low mechanical pulse of a warship transitioning from watch to combat, unhurried, economical, final. On the main display, 3 tracks stretch outward from the Iranian coastline, cold and screaming fast, cutting across dark water toward the heart of the carrier strike group. No one needs the situation explained. The officer standing at the console states it aloud anyway, as doctrine demands. Possible coastal launch, multiple inbound, time to outer screen under 4 minutes. Up on the bridge, the sea still looks indifferent. The early morning light is barely lifting over the horizon, turning the surface a flat, steely blue, the kind of calm that conceals everything dangerous beneath it. Across the formation, alarms cascade faster than the light spreading over the water. On the carrier, flight crews freeze mid-motion and instinctively look toward the island. On the port cruiser, the air search radar is already painting the tracks and feeding data into the shared network. On the destroyer sitting closest to the threat axis, the commanding officer steps to the centerline, watching the horizon through glass that reflects nothing except instruments and concentrated purpose. His voice, when it comes, is even. Set condition 3 throughout the screen, weapons tight pending final confirmation. The order moves through the ship like a current through copper. Below deck, sailors brace and buckle in. Hatches seal with heavy metallic thuds. Consoles bloom to full life. Out on the weather decks, weapon mounts rotate just far enough to acknowledge the threat. Nothing extra, nothing wasted. The carrier at the center of the formation holds her heading. No panic turns, no dramatic course breaks, just disciplined speed and formation spacing. A total practiced faith in a kill chain that has to function without a single failure. Inside the combat information center, the picture sharpens by the second. The tracks are low, sea-skimming, and still accelerating. An operator cycles through filters, checks the return again, and speaks with an edge of urgency that was not there before. Confirmed, not aircraft, not surface clutter, these are missiles. A beat passes, weightless. Then the tactical officer responds with a composure that only sounds cold, because there is simply no room left for anything else. Report to the group. Multiple anti-ship missiles inbound from the Iranian coast. On the secure network, the message propagates instantly. Every vessel in the formation receives it at the same moment. The carrier group is no longer watching a developing threat, it is absorbing one. Shortly after, bridge-to-bridge warnings flood the open channels. Iranian coastal station, this is a United States Navy formation operating lawfully in international waters. You are engaging United States naval vessels. Ceasefire immediately. No answer comes. A second transmission follows, firmer in tone, then a third. The frequency returns nothing but static. Silence carries its own intelligence. Whoever is on that shoreline is not probing. They are not posturing. They are not attempting a negotiation through radio traffic. Someone along that coast has already made the irreversible decision to fire. Now the only question that matters is whether the first American intercept happens far out over open water or dangerously close. Minutes into the engagement, the fleet begins to move. Outer destroyers drift wider, angling their hulls to optimize the intercept corridor. The cruiser pivots slightly to address a second approach vector. Up on the carrier island, air defense officers study the tactical plot as crews rush to secure equipment and clear the exposed flight deck. No one raises their voice. The choreography is too deeply rehearsed for that. Sailors who have run through this scenario 100 times are now living it. And reality, as it turns out, is always quieter than the imagination. Inside the lead destroyer's combat center, a single inbound track suddenly separates into two. Then another contact splits. "Stand by," the operator mutters, his voice tightening for the first time. More returns. "We have multiple. Total count is 5. Wait, make that 6. That number lands hard. 3 was a threat. 6 is a declaration. 6 represents intent. A deliberate attempt at saturation, at flooding the defense, at catching at least one American hull exposed in the opening exchange. But exposure is the one thing this fleet has spent years engineering against. The Aegis operator begins prioritizing targets. Range numbers tick downward, impact timers compress. The threat closes on the outer screen, then one missile deviates, just slightly, just enough to drop the temperature of every person in the room. It is no longer tracking the lead destroyer. It has curved deeper into the formation, threading toward the carrier. On the bridge, the commanding officer watches the plot for one quiet second, then issues the order the entire ship has been waiting for. Confirmation received. Weapons free. Inside the combat center, no one reacts visibly. They simply accelerate. Target data locks firm. Fire control solutions are clean and holding. Missile crews steady themselves, fingers close to the controls. Across the fleet, American warships orient to meet incoming steel with their own. And on every screen in the strike group, the same unambiguous reality is written in moving symbols. Iran fired first, and the first wave is only beginning. The tactical display is no longer a chart of the ocean, it is a countdown. 6 hostile missiles skim low over the swells, each one moving fast enough to convert a moment's hesitation into ruin. Their altitude is punishing. Their spacing is precise in a way that speaks of deliberate engineering. Their flight paths are designed to divide the defense, force early expenditure of interceptors, and peel open a single lane straight through to the carrier group's core. The tactical officer does not blink. Engage outer raid, assign shooters. Priority on tracks 1 through 4, hold the close layer for leakers. That single command contains a complete tactical philosophy. Destroy the first wave at maximum distance, reserve the innermost defensive tier for anything that survives. Across the strike group, the response is seamless. Data from the cruiser, from the escorts, from the carrier's own sensors all merge into one unified picture. Every ship tracks the same 6 missiles. Every team reads from the same map, and every commanding officer knows the calculus. If the outer screen fails, the engagement becomes desperate. On the forward edge of the formation, the first destroyer pivots to sharpen its radar window. A second ship on the port side mirrors the movement. The formation is not merely reacting, it is actively sculpting a kill zone. Hostile track 1, bearing 037. Range closing. Track 2 hostile, same corridor. Track 3 maneuvering. Track 4 steady, sea skimming. The numbers fall faster now, then the command, fire. Deep within the hull, the vertical launch system responds with precision. A missile blasts from its cell, rolls into the early dawn light, and ignites across the wave tops. A second follows within a breath, then a third. From a distance, it looks clean, almost serene. Inside the Combat Information Center, no one looks up from their scopes. Every eye is fixed on symbols converging, flaring, and disappearing. The first intercept connects far out, well beyond the formation's edge. A hostile track pulses once, then vanishes. Splash 1. No celebration, just logged confirmation. A second interceptor climbs, arcs, and descends onto the next inbound. The enemy missile jinks low, trying to use surface return for cover, but the fire control solution was already well ahead of it. Splash 2. 2 down, 4 still running. Along the carrier's centerline, the flight deck transforms within seconds. Yellow shirts, red shirts, ordnance handlers, deck crews, everyone moves with the kind of urgency that comes not from panic, but from absolute clarity of purpose. Jets staged for earlier operations are being chained down and pushed clear of the edges. Fire teams hold position at critical points, charged hoses in hand. No one is panicking, everyone is simply moving very fast. Up on the bridge, the air defense commander watches the net and the tactical plot simultaneously. 2 kills at range, 1 more intercept in progress, but the geometry of the attack is shifting. Out on the screen, an Iranian missile drops its altitude further and swings wide, slipping beneath radar coverage for a critical few seconds. A second follows moments later, offset just enough to disrupt timing. The operator calls it flatly, Raid is splitting. Two inbounds pushing the southern corridor. Possible saturation tactic. Not possible. That is exactly what it is. These missiles were never designed to arrive in a line. They were designed to pull ships apart, force premature engagement, and manufacture a single opening to push through. The cruiser on the carrier's flank engages. A fresh pair of interceptors leave their cells and climb into the morning sky. On the shared display, the geometry tightens rapidly. For 2 seconds, 3 symbols converge at brutal speed. One hostile track disappears, splash 3, but the second survives the first engagement window and keeps coming, so low it is nearly absorbed by the surface noise. The room goes quiet, not because the danger is receding, but because it is arriving. The outer layer has done its job, but not completely. 3 hostile missiles have been confirmed destroyed. A 4th has likely broken up somewhere beyond visual range. But 2 are still inbound. One of them is no longer aimed at the escorts. It has reached past them, tracking inward, bearing down on the carrier's defensive ring. The tactical action officer shifts immediately. Reassign tracks, hold long shots on Leaker 2. Prepare the close layer. I repeat, prepare the close layer. That order changes the character of the engagement for every ship in the formation. Long-range intercepts are largely the domain of the system itself. Fast, precise, almost clinical. Close layer defense is something different. The reaction window is collapsing. The engagement is no longer abstract geometry on a screen. Sailors on the open deck will hear it. It is no longer a symbol. It is a real object, moving at real speed with real mass, and the final kill must happen now, with no margin remaining. On an escorting destroyer, the close-in weapon team brings their system to full combat readiness. Mounts slew, radar locks, ammunition feeds cycle. Everything hangs on angles measured in fractions of a second. Inside the carrier island, the plot updates. One missile is still outside the inner defensive ring. The other has crossed it. The Combat Information Center breaks the silence. Leaker confirmed. Bearing 041. Fast, very fast. Out on the water, there are no Hollywood fireballs yet. No dramatic smoke columns. Just the cold grey light of early morning, sea haze, and a carrier group holding its shape, while a weapon designed specifically to kill it races across the surface. Then the voice from the escort destroyer tightens the circuit for every operator in the network. Target is inside the kill box. The enemy missile breaches the inner defensive ring. On the tactical display, the icon is small, unwavering, and moving with a velocity that makes distance meaningless. Inside the destroyer's combat center, every person present understands what that symbol represents. The outer layer held against most of the salvo, but one threat navigated through it. An Iranian sea-skimming missile has outlasted the long-range interceptors and is now sprinting hard across open water, using the curvature of the ocean and surface clutter to buy itself a few more seconds of life. A few seconds is all it needs. Leaker, bearing 041, range 9 miles. The voice remains controlled, but that number registers in the room like a physical impact. 9 miles at that velocity is not a measurement of distance. It is a measurement of time running out. On the destroyer guarding the carrier's starboard side, the close-in defense team is locked. The ship angles slightly, positioning its hull between the inbound track and the center of the fleet. Not a dramatic maneuver, just steel rotating a few degrees with absolute and deliberate purpose. Enough to fix the geometry, enough to get a clean engagement window. Enough to serve as a final barrier if everything else fails. On the bridge, the commanding officer watches a horizon still pale with early light. He does not require a status report to know what his ship is doing. He issued the order before anyone could ask. Hold course, keep the carrier covered. Below deck, the weapon mount traverses with mechanical patience. Radar sensors refine the lock. Fire control narrows the solution. Every system aboard is now oriented toward a single objective. Kill that missile before it crosses the threshold. The carrier holds in formation behind them. No course break, no smoke, no chaos. Just the cold, professional certainty of a ship that trusts its escorts to do precisely what they were engineered to do. In the combat center, range counts down. 8 miles, track stable, altitude unchanged. That last detail is critical. The missile is not climbing for a terminal dive. It is staying in the weeds, fused to the surface, forcing the defense to operate with zero margin for error. It was built for exactly this. Fired from the coast and pushed low across the water, it was never meant to be detected in time. It was meant to simply arrive. Then a new voice cuts across the cruiser net. Second leaker detected, emerging from the north. Delayed track, possible follow-on strike. No one on the destroyer reacts outwardly, but the implication is stark. This may not be a single surviving missile, there could be another one trailing close behind. The formation could be seconds away from two close-range engagements in rapid succession, but the first one is already here. Range 6 miles. The command arrives instantly. Engage the inner layer. A missile defense system fires from the destroyer with a sharp concussive punch. It climbs, rolls, and drives toward the inbound track. For 1 second, the display tightens into a single converging point. Then nothing. The hostile track is still there. No splash, no confirmed kill. The combat center holds its silence. No one freezes. Training strips away everything except the sequence. Interceptor missed. Re-engage. Now. The room contracts. Not louder, smaller, because everyone inside holds the same brutal awareness. The first shot missed, and the missile is still running. Range 4 miles. On the carrier island, officers stare at the data and say almost nothing. Flight deck crews crouch behind equipment and chained aircraft. Fire teams are exactly where they are supposed to be. The massive ship continues underway, but the tension across her decks is physical, a pressure that builds ahead of violence. From the escort destroyer's open deck, the missile is still invisible. Just glare bouncing off the water and a hard, low horizon. But the ship's systems see it perfectly. That is enough. The commanding officer speaks once. Take it. This time the answer bypasses the missile cells entirely. It comes from something closer and faster. The close-in weapon system spins to life with a rising, hungry mechanical pitch, tracking faster than any human eye can follow. Radar locks. The barrel cluster aligns. The final barrier is awake. Range 3 miles, then 2.5, then 2. The gun opens up. It is a burst of fire so dense it presents itself almost as a solid object, a continuous stream of metal thrown across the water. A fraction of a second later, the space where that metal is going is no longer empty. The missile appears for the first time, low, fast, barely separated from the surface, and then the rounds reach it. The sea just ahead of the formation erupts, not a clean fireball, but a violent, tearing mid-air disintegration off the starboard axis, close enough for flame and fragments to scatter wide across the water in a spreading, burning curtain. The shockwave rolls low over the surface. Burning debris skips across the swells and breaks apart in the chop. Inside the Combat Information Center, the symbol vanishes from the display. Half a second later, the word arrives. Splash, splash, confirmed splash. No one celebrates. The blast was close, uncomfortably, undeniably close. On the destroyer's bridge, the windows shudder faintly from the concussion. On the carrier, sailors flinch as a sharp orange flash throws itself across the waterline in the distance. For a moment, every person in the formation understands with absolute clarity how thin that margin was. The shield held, but only just. Then the next report arrives. New emissions from the Iranian coast. An operator turns in his chair. Thermal spike at the probable launch area. Additional radar activity detected inland. The tactical action officer looks back at the display. The first leaker is gone. The second track remains uncertain. But farther east, past the sea haze, the shoreline is active again. He says it quietly, without drama. They are not finished. Shortly after, as smoke still drifts in the place where the first missile died, American surveillance assets begin confirming the one thing no one in the carrier group wanted to hear. The launch infrastructure along the Iranian coast is showing signs of renewed activity. The battle shifts into a different phase. Until now, the carrier group has been purely reactive, intercepting, absorbing pressure, and holding the line together. But as American sensors register new signals from ashore, defense alone is no longer the correct posture. The incoming barrage was not a lone weapon fired from a concealed position. It was a coordinated strike from a live, networked system. And that system is still operational. Inside the Combat Direction Center, the tactical map grows sharper with each passing moment. Radar returns, thermal signatures, and probable mobile launcher positions accumulate along the jagged coastline. The air warfare commander studies the display, reading the geometry of the attack in sustained silence. The ghost tracks from the first salvo are still faintly visible, arcing lines from shore to sea, like marks that do not want to be erased. Now fresh intelligence is layering itself across those lines. Electronic support from the escorts intersects with infrared data from overhead assets. Ships that were fighting for their lives minutes ago are now contributing targeting geometry. Isolated, each data point is useful. Combined, they form a target. Probable coastal battery, an operator reports. Mobile launch unit with associated radar support. A second emitter has just gone active inland. Different angle. Could be backup fire control. That is enough. The strike group does not require speeches or motivation. It requires targets, and the targeting picture is crystallizing. Someone on that shore fired, and they are evidently preparing to fire again. The only remaining question is whether the Americans can break the kill chain before another round is in the air. On the bridge, the Admiral receives the intelligence with the same flat composure that has governed the engagement from the beginning. Do we have a lock? The response is immediate. Good enough to suppress. Improving every second, he gives a single nod. Turn the tide. Those 3 words land with more weight than any missile. Across the fleet, the carrier group transitions from shield to blade. The escorts maintain their vigil on the horizon, staying defensive on the chance that additional missiles are already airborne. But behind that outer wall, the carrier's air wing is coming alive for an entirely different purpose. This is no longer air defense. This is counterfire. On the flight deck, crews who minutes ago were bracing for impact are now preparing for launch. Chocks are pulled, chains come free. Ordnance teams work under the wings with the seamless speed of people who have rehearsed this in darkness, in rain, in every condition imaginable. Jet fuel sharpens the morning air. Engines begin spooling up one by one. Not for show. These aircraft are going to open a corridor. Electronic warfare leads the strike because those coastal batteries remain lethal only for as long as they can see and communicate. Blind the radar, sever the data link, isolate the launcher from its network. At that point, it becomes a machine sitting in the open, waiting. Inside the planning compartment, the strike order is issued in precise operational terms. First, locate the radar emitter directing the coastal battery. Second, jam the targeting feed. Third, cut the launcher from the network. Finally, destroy the launch vehicles and support equipment before they can disperse. This is not retaliation in the emotional sense. It is systems warfare, prosecuted with surgical logic. High above the wavetops, an airborne early warning platform expands the tactical aperture. Passive sensors scan the coast for emissions and heat. One target goes dark, another blinks into life and fades. A third signal holds steady for too long to be background noise. That is the one, a persistent emitter associated with a warm vehicle signature, a probable launcher site. The strike lead receives the intelligence update as his aircraft rolls onto the catapult. He does not need a full briefing. He needs one clear pressure point, a location where a precise strike forces the battery to either move or die. He has it. The first American aircraft launch in sequence, noses pointed east, staying low before climbing into the brightening sky. Behind them, the carrier continues underway, defended, alert, and anticipating one last attempt by the enemy to fire before the window closes. The escort ships do not relax. Their radars hold the horizon. Tactical teams remain fixed on their screens. Even with aircraft in the air, the threat posture stays high. That sustained vigilance is what keeps a fleet alive. It is not anxiety. It is discipline. Then the first result. An Iranian radar that had been emitting steadily for 2 minutes suddenly spikes, flickers, and drops from the network. Moments later, a secondary signal appears from inland, weak and reactive, a backup node scrambling to assume control of a fight that it has already lost. The air warfare commander tracks the shifting picture. They are trying to hand off control, too little and far too late. Offshore, the American strike aircraft press the attack. The coast that appeared defensible minutes ago is now geometrically exposed. Every emitted pulse and thermal bloom has provided precise coordinates. Iran launched from the shore under the assumption that proximity to their own territory would provide some protection. Instead, the act of firing revealed exactly where they were located and precisely how their engagement system was structured. That was the critical error, not simply firing first, but firing and failing, and in doing so, illuminating everything. A pilot reports contact on the primary target zone. From the cockpit, there is no battlefield in the conventional sense, only heat signatures, metallic returns, and angles. A launch site on the coast, support vehicles, and a radar unit attempting concealment after it is already mapped and bracketed. The pilot rolls in. Out on the perimeter, the escorts hold the water. The carrier maintains her position and heading at the formation's core. On the coast, the site that attempted to sink a United States carrier is seconds from erasure. The horizon flashes for the pilots running in low over the swells. It is not a cinematic moment, not emotionally, not in the cockpit. No elation, no pause to observe the result, just confirmation and immediate transition to the next objective. The primary launch site from the earlier salvo is now a scattering of heat blooms on the sensor display. Radar failing, vehicles burning, or stopped dead. Main target suppressed. The radio transmission is flat and professional. A moment later, another voice confirms, no new launches detected. Out at sea, inside the American strike group, the engagement has finally turned in a definitive direction. It is not that danger has disappeared, it is that the tempo has changed ownership. For the first time since those missiles left the Iranian coast, the strike group is no longer absorbing the fight. It holds the momentum now. Escorts are still scanning every approach corridor. Fire control teams remain locked to their consoles. Weapons are still ready, but the network is hunting outward now, looking for targets rather than bracing for threats. The sea lanes ahead are quiet. The shoreline that attempted to dictate the terms of the engagement is now under sustained pressure. On the carrier's bridge, no one is mistaking this for safety. The Admiral reviews the tactical display as reports arrive in short professional fragments. One launcher destroyed, one radar site eliminated, one backup emitter disrupted. Possible vehicle movement inland. No confirmed third salvo. That last item carries real weight. Minutes ago, the formation was steeling itself for the next wave. Now the Iranian kill chain is fragmented, its surviving elements struggling to coordinate. The carrier is still underway, steady, unbroken, intact. In the middle of the formation, jets continue launching and recovering. Deck crews are back at work under a sky that, not long ago, was a corridor of incoming fire. That is the real measure of the engagement. The mission did not stop. The operations did not scatter. The ships did not break from formation. The carrier never lost her flight deck. Iran launched from the coast, expecting disorder, disruption, and perhaps panic. What they encountered instead was something far more consequential to their own calculus: the full, uninterrupted rhythm of a United States Navy response. Detect, absorb, isolate. Strike back before the enemy can reset. On one of the escort destroyers, the close-in weapon crew remains at full readiness, even after the immediate danger has passed. Their system destroyed the missile that came closest to the carrier, the one that navigated inside the defensive ring and forced the final barrier to fire. They know precisely how narrow that margin was. They know how close the debris fell. They know the sound of a sea-skimming missile destroyed at near-contact range. No one aboard that ship considers what just happened a comfortable outcome. Below deck, damage control teams complete their rounds. Several escorts show shock indicators from the near intercepts. Exposed equipment requires inspection. Technicians are out on the radar antennas. Weapon mounts are being verified, but the status report across the group remains the same. No ships lost, no operations halted. The strike group is unbroken and holding its formation. Further east, strike aircraft continue to work the coastline, not recklessly and not for effect, but precisely enough to ensure that surviving systems do not find a second window to fire. That measured restraint carries its own message, as powerful as the counterattack itself. The objective was never noise or spectacle. It was control. That is where the larger meaning settles. Iran's coastal battery operated on the assumption that a shoreline position provided some strategic shelter. Fire from land, force the Navy into a reactive posture, then fall back behind terrain. But coastal offensive operations only achieve their purpose if the opening strike generates total disruption. If the first wave fails, the act of firing becomes evidence. Radar emissions become map coordinates. Thermal signatures become aiming points. The entire engagement chain becomes a trail that can be followed and destroyed. Eventually, as the fighting subsides, the ocean surrounding the carrier group appears unchanged. The horizon remains a pale, flat grey. The water is still. The outer escorts hold their distance while the cruiser maintains station. The carrier pushes ahead with the same weighted confidence she carried before the first launch. But beneath that surface calm, the balance of the engagement has been permanently altered. Iran made the first move. Iran lost its advantage. In doing so, it exposed the full geography and architecture of its coastal launch network. And the United States Navy responded exactly as it has trained to respond across decades of preparation. Stay disciplined. Allow the enemy's first move to become their last meaningful one. That is the part of modern naval warfare that rarely gets described in any headline. The side that fires first does not necessarily own the outcome. The side that commands the sequence does. The final assessment of the engagement settles in across the strike group. One near miss, multiple clean intercepts, one battery silenced, no follow-on salvo. Carrier operations continuing. A clean tactical result, but not a simple one. Because everyone aboard those ships understands what this morning actually demonstrated. Modern naval warfare is decided in fractions of seconds. The gap between a warning tone and terminal impact is shorter than most can conceive. The margin between a successful defense and catastrophic loss is often one system, one trained crew, or one final burst of fire. The carrier pushes forward, her escorts remain on full alert. The coastline remains under watch. Over the internal communications net, the mood across the formation is not celebratory. It is colder than that, more deliberate, more aware. The battery was found and the battery was silenced. Should another launcher somewhere along that shore choose to fire across open water, it will do so with the full knowledge of what the response will look like. No confusion, no delay. Only American steel arriving in sequence.